What do you need to do to prepare to get divorced? Look, the most applicable phrase I can think of in this situation is the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago, and the next best time is today. So, first thing I want you to do is take a breath. If you've made it to this video, you may be feeling overwhelmed. There's a lot of information out there. You've got lawyers, you've got financial planners, wealth advisors, counselors, people who are divorced. Like, the internet is flooded trying to tell you all the things you need to do to get ready to get divorced. And like, look, yes, there are things you can do to get prepared. I mean, the very first thing is making the decision. And I'm talking about one of those decisions. It's not waffly, it's not wobbly knees. Down to your core, you know this is the move that you need to make for you and your family. Okay, so if you're already here watching this video, you've probably made that decision. All right, you're already on your way. The other thing I want you to do is to start to get your financial house in order. If you're like me, you're a busy mom, you're a busy dad, maybe you own a business, maybe you have a busy work life, of course, or you're even at home taking care of kids. There just don't seem to be enough hours in the day. You may be struggling, you may be having a hard time with the fact you need to get divorced. So be gentle with yourself on this part. If number one of your priorities is not keeping all your tax returns in little file folders with labels printed out. Like, it makes me laugh thinking about that because I'm so not that kind of person. Even if you might think I would be that way, I'm definitely not. I'm more of like it's over there in that drawer kind of person. So if you're like me and it's somewhere in that stack kind of person, let's pull out the stack. Maybe at night, if your spouse is out of town or you've got some free time during the day when nobody's at home, let's pull out that stack of documents. Let's start gathering them and finding out where there are holes. Because probably there's some things you need to get together that you may not be thinking of, like deeds, titles to different vehicles. You need to have your tax returns back for at least a few years. If you have any businesses that you own or LLCs that you have been formed during the marriage, let's pull those formation documents, the operating agreements. I'd really like you to get copies of your bank statements, checking, savings. If you have a business, all of your business books. Let's get credit card statements so you can have an idea of where the money's been spent, what you need to be thinking about in terms of budgets. Another big one is gathering up documents about your work. Like, have you been awarded restricted stock? We're going to need a copy of that award letter to understand how those assets will be divided upon divorce. So that's not a comprehensive list, but if you can get all of that stuff together, you'll be pretty far on your way. Because what we're trying to do in a divorce is name it to tame it. So we've got to know what all exists so then we can say how it's going to get split up. And you're going to do that in what's called an inventory and appraisement. And I find it's helpful to me if you're going to tell me to do something like I'm telling you, like, what is this all going to be for? So this inventory and appraisement is a spreadsheet that's essentially a balance sheet of your life. It's going to have all of the assets and all of the liabilities, whether separate or community, so that we can put those on a spreadsheet and start figuring out the nature of the estate and what we're going to do. So you're going to gather all those documents, get started. You will have holes, and this gives you some time to start to plug those in. Now, what I recommend that you do is to save all of these documents in some sort of a secure, he or she can't get to it location. Like, probably what you should do is create a new email address on an incognito window on your computer that has a new Google Drive that's a password unlike anything you've ever done. Get all of this stuff scanned and uploaded somehow into that Google Drive. So, what you want to do is be kind of like a duck, calm on the surface and paddle in underneath real fast. Little ducky legs just kind of makes me laugh. Anyway, so what you're going to do is make this Google Drive so all of those documents live in one place. It'll make you start to organize them, and that's going to save you money longer term in your divorce. So think about naming them in a way that would make sense to someone who isn't you. So that's like a real pro tip. This will save you money long term. Like, name the document, the year of the document, and the date, and then the day. So like 2024.01.01, that'd be a statement from the first of the year, right? And then what is the thing? Chase bank statement for account X123, like what they end in. So that's how you're going to save it. Starting to get some folders together. What this is also going to do is help you feel better that you're doing something in this process, right? So if you're the sort of person who needs to be active and needs to feel like they're doing something, this is super going to help you. Now, the other thing you need to start thinking about is what you want in the divorce. I mean, I think to some extent you're going to need legal counsel to help think through what's realistic. But if you can start ruminating on non-negotiables for you, things you'd like to see, things you need to communicate to your future legal team that are no-brainers or deal breakers for you. Like, I have to take my business out of the divorce. I have to be able to relocate back to DFW where I'm from. I really, really, really need cash because I'm afraid I don't make as much money and I'm going to be super strapped in trying to get a new place for me and the kids. So think about your goals and the things you want. Related to this, I need you to start thinking about a plan for how you're going to practically do your life once this divorce starts. Because people, I think, often are ill prepared for the practical reality. Like, it is such a high, tall hurdle to decide you want to get divorced. You're sort of like, okay, I've done it. But we have to keep going. We're not just like on the top of the mountain. Like, you got to keep going on the other side of the mountain, right? So we're going to pack our bags so that we're ready for the entire journey. And during the divorce and after, you're going to need a plan. How are you going to pay for groceries at HEB? How are you going to pay for a new place? How are you going to afford your current mortgage? What about health insurance? Can you keep making those premiums? Now, look, it gets complicated. We could talk forever, a whole new video on this about how money's going to work during the divorce. But if you're like me, I like to plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? So that you have an idea of, okay, during the divorce, it may go one way, but after the divorce, when there's only one income in my home, can I still afford to live in the zip code where I currently reside? And after all of the housing stuff happened and COVID and right afterwards and with interest rates, we're seeing this is a pretty difficult question for people because you can't rebuy in your same neighborhood. So like, look, it's not going to get better if you ignore it. I need you to go ahead and start thinking that through. You might even start visiting with like a realtor or friends, like, be cool about it. Don't be announcing your whole thing, but just getting a feel for maybe on Zillow or Redfin or something, like what do things cost in your area, so you can start to make a plan in the beginnings of a budget of just literally how you're going to pay your bills while this is going on. Another thing you need to think about is how are you going to get access to resources to afford to pay for a lawyer for the duration of your case? And most law firms, I know us at Hembree Bell, we do this. We can accept credit cards, Venmo, PayPal, cash check, obviously like kind of whatever. But you're going to need access to some cash to pay for a lawyer, be it us or whoever else it's going to be. And nobody gets divorced because it's like a cheap thing to do, all right? So you need to be thinking ahead. Is there some cash you can get access to? Do you need to take out a credit card preemptively before you need it and start to build up that balance to give you some runway to work with to finance the legal part of your case? And now look, depending on your situation, you may or may not have access to his or her income going forward to pay for those fees. Definitely it's like legal to pay for legal fees in a divorce. We get that question a lot. Like, can I use our money to pay for legal fees in a divorce? Yes, absolutely you can. Sometimes though, it can be hard to get access to that money. So like if you're in that situation, you're definitely going to want to do if you're preparing to get divorced. Try to get access to every shred of financial information that you're entitled to, because it can be really hard after the divorce has started to do that. Now, technically, legally, you're supposed to be able to get it all. I'm just a realistic person, and sometimes you have to go to court to fight about that. I don't want you in that position. So you're going to get logins, you're going to get your name on accounts and on statements way ahead of time, way before you ever need it. So when the time comes and you need to pay the lawyer, you have access to cash to be able to do that. You have access to credit cards if you need to. Maybe your family, you talk to them in advance to make sure you have that option. Another thing you're going to do is make sure and have a support system in place. This is not going to be easy. I'm not saying it has to be absolutely terrible and the worst thing ever, but every divorce involves some degree of a death in a way. It's the death of a marriage, of what a family once looked like. and what a future could have looked like. So going through that process is likely to involve some sort of upheaval from you. And that may vary wildly from like, sadness sometimes to complete and total mental breakdown, right? So like there is a spectrum. So I want to make sure you have a plan in place that you get the support that you need through, clinical support like a counselor, a therapist, a group, church sort of stuff, right? Going to a synagogue, like whatever your religious thing is, friends who are supportive and trustworthy and confidential, family members that you can trust and rely on. Make sure you have that support system in place so that they can help be that rock, remind you who you are, remind you of what you're working for and why you've made this decision when things get really tough. Now, one little word about that, I can't not say it, is I want you to be a little careful on that last one about getting the support that you need, because I'm always thinking like a lawyer, right? And all of those communications you have with those people, arguably except your doctors, but it kind of depends. That's complicated. Anyway, it could become discoverable in your case. So just use caution and discernment with who you share the deep details of your feelings and your thoughts, just because you could hear about it again. And I'd rather you have the support and we'll deal with it on the back end, but I think I'd be remiss not to tell you that things you say out there in the world to your friends or whatever could come into your case if asked, like in a deposition or in discovery or things like that. The other thing I want you to do is clean up your social media, right? This is not the time to be posting all mean things about your spouse or divorce in general, or kind of a bunch of partying and stuff like that. Let's just use this as an opportunity as you're thinking about maybe getting some divorce someday, that you want to have social media that doesn't give you anxiety of how that could play out in your case. Be careful, because you could get into a spoliation of evidence thing. So don't do that after you file for divorce, but in advance, we want to make sure that we are, putting our best face forward whenever we're thinking about getting divorced. And another thing you can do if you're thinking about getting divorced is, I really want you to be mom of the year, dad of the year. And this one is nuanced, and I think I'm able to share this just with all of the people I've worked with and the practical experience that I have. What you don't want to do is go into the divorce on the most busy time you've ever had at work. And you've been traveling so much, and you've been gone for 3 weeks a month doing video shoots or whatever the thing is. That's really different than your normal situation. But if you looked at it in a vacuum, you don't look like you're the parent who does that much. You're not taking them to school. You're not taking them to the doctor. You're not doing any of this stuff. And if you file for divorce when you've been having a hard time, you've been traveling a lot for work, where that decision point happens, if it's not been your best parenting moment, that could affect what temporary orders are possible in your case, and ultimately could affect the outcome of what happens. So if you have the control and you're thinking of being the one who's filing for divorce, I really want you to put your very best parent foot forward, so that if that court is going to be looking at who's doing what, and even if you're not trying to be the primary parent, but really want to have more access or make those arguments, at least give yourself that opportunity by being mom or dad of the year. And I don't want a bunch of comments trying to say I'm trying to tell you to be something you're not. If you're watching this far in the video, I imagine you're a good parent. It's just that life sometimes, even relationships with couples, you may have that agreement in your family that for your job, you travel a lot because that's kind of the division of labor. And even if that's true, when you get divorced, those divisions of labor kind of crumble under the microscope of the court. So I want you to think about that in your behavior and the way you approach this. And then the last thing I think you need to do to get prepared to file for divorce is to really work on your own mindset and invest the time and energy in personal growth and things that lift you up and give you joy and that can kind of pull you forward and propel you forward to a new reality. Because I think what's going to happen is that's going to give you something to work for, something to strive for, a way to become, because you can become through your divorce. You can grow and evolve in this process. And I'd much rather you start with that end in mind than they're like, oh, I just got to survive it. I just got to get through it. But instead, positive, growth mindset oriented mindset, sort of like podcast, books, things with like meditation and some of those coping strategies, bringing those in on the front end will serve you so well. I think also it could make your divorce end well, which is what we strive to do at Hembree Bell Law. And it could help you to set yourself up for a much smoother, much more cost-effective, much cleaner ending. And that's good for everybody. So that's a lot of things that you can do to prepare to get divorced. Look, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to be able to do all of this right now. Ideally, this is 6 months to a year before you're thinking of getting divorced, and you can start to put some of these things in place so that whenever the time comes, you feel calm, you feel ready. That's different, of course, if you're not in the driver's seat and it's news to you and your partner's starting to talk about, hey, I think maybe divorce is on the table. Then you just do these steps, but on turbo speed.